Hello and welcome to my podcast, Little Girls Aren't Taught This. I am your host, Self-Love Lydia, former self-love coach turned business coach and mentor. This is the podcast where you get clarity on exactly what it takes to create an authentic business that allows you to scale with sustainability. I'll discuss why strategy meets self-love and spirituality has been the foundation of my success and got me to where I am today. After creating 2 successful brands and businesses driven by impact, I generated thousands in income through the power of authenticity, life-changing signature programs, and passion for what I sell. I am on a mission to show you what's possible when you lead with purpose, when you sell with passion and you create a brand that gets you mentioned at the fucking table. My intention is to empower you with raw topics each week on business, self-love, female empowerment, and spirituality so you can create freedom in your life with a business that you absolutely love. So let's dive right into this week's episode. Hello, beautiful people, and welcome back to another podcast episode. I am actually looking forward to recording this one. So yesterday I put up a Q&A about some, topics that you'd like to see me discuss. Now I'm also shifting over into this business space. So it's like, it feels new. And one of the things that came up in the question box was feeling the fear and doing it anyway. And that felt really good because I was actually going to record a podcast episode on it at some point because I feel like me and fear, we've got a close relationship. As much as I do not like to say that, I think the past year I have done a lot of dancing with fear, and it's something I have had to continuously overcome and continuously move through. So I'm just going to share my top tips for moving through fear and how you can just feel the fear and do it anyway, because I know a lot of you guys listening to this, I think especially I'm going to direct this in a business sense. A lot of you guys listening to this, fear is a normal part of expansion. Fear is a normal part of growth. And I think even if so I just said business, but then pulling from my own experience, even ending a relationship, even deciding to go traveling, even deciding to quit my job, even deciding to small things like completely change my hair. Remember last year when I cut my hair off? And I had the French bob, all of these things when we are growing and we are changing who we are and we are changing our sense of identity, we will have those moments where we have fear. And often that's because of whether it's fear of judgment, fear of the unknown, fear of it going wrong, fear of the risk that we're taking. It's always going to be a natural part of the progression and the journey. So I'm really looking forward to jumping into this podcast episode. But before I do, I just want to come on and also say that I have 3 spots at the moment open for business mentoring / coaching. It's pretty much the same thing. And I just want to share a few details on this because I am really, really committing to calling in some one-on-one clients. Some business women, some self-led women, some impact-driven women. And the container that is available is working with me for 4 months. And it is for the woman who wants to create an authentic, raw brand and business. It's for the woman who wants to show up and be unapologetic on Instagram or any platform. And in that authenticity, she is able to create a product suite that she loves. She is able to create offers that she puts out and she just gets behind so much because she loves them. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking, yes, that is me, that is what I want to do with my business in order to scale, in order to create the income, in order to create impact, well then I'm just letting you know that I have 3 spots available for you if this is resonating, or for the 3 women listening to this. So if you would be interested, drop me a DM on Instagram, selflove.lydia, or hit me up in the emails, which is linked in the show notes. And let's look at completely creating this business that just absolutely you fucking love, that you can just show up as yourself, that you can just sell and you feel aligned and you feel like this is the thing for you and you're creating this income and this space and this freedom in your life. So if this is for you, hit me up and let's see what magic we can create together working for 4 months. So back to the episode. So I just want to give a little bit of context in relation to fear, because I don't really feel like I've spoken about it, but well, I have a little bit. But as you know, last year I made an investment and it went terribly wrong, in the sense of, you know, I invested around 10k and I invested with this coach who was gonna help me, so they said, scale, create sustainability, like all of these things with my business. And what actually happened is I lost all of my money. Pretty much my business was destroyed in terms of like how it was set up and the programs that went on, just everything. But one of the biggest things that happened to me, and it's not just happened to me, it's happened to many, many other people. It's like a common thing when I'm having conversations. This thing around fear was so prominent. And the reason being is because if I'd go into a launch, and I'll be totally transparent in this episode, I had launches last year that did not work. Like, nobody signed up, nobody was interested, numbers were actually declining. And I understand why now. I'm reflecting back on it. I understand why that was happening. But, you know, when you invest in a coach, you kind of hope that support is there, and we're like, okay, like, let's see what we can do and let's fix it and let's get everything back on track. Anyway, what ended up happening is every time I was showing up in the space that I was in and I was talking about these things, there was this common theme occurring where it was always projected back onto me. And I seen this happen, and I've had conversations with many other coaches, and, you know, this fear was being created. It was like a snowball effect. So one of the biggest things that made me come out and break the contract for that investment that I made was, I remember getting to the point where I couldn't sleep. Like, it started to literally impact my mental health. I was going into the group, I was saying, you know, I'm not sleeping, like, it's not working, like, help me, because it's not working, and it was working. And again, it was just always about me coming back to my why and me connecting to it. And what was actually happening is I was internalizing all of that failure, and what it was doing was creating this massive energetic block that I was carrying, and the block was fear. So I decided to come out of that group program, and I remember the moment I was speaking to other people who were like in that container or were out of that container, and someone just said to me, I feel the same way as you. And I remember sitting in Starbucks, and I remember I was probably the lowest I've been in a long time. Bearing in mind, this is whilst I was dealing with like the infection and stuff, and, you know, navigating having one friggin' boob. And I remember sitting there, and I sat in Starbucks, and I started to cry, because I realised it wasn't me. I realised it wasn't just down to me why things were going so bad, and why, you know, the money had dried up and the sales weren't coming in. And it was that in itself that I was just like, okay, I'm coming out. Like, I have to choose myself, or I choose this contract and, you know, this commitment that I'd made. And I chose myself. And let me tell you, I felt fucking sick making that decision. And you know why I felt that way? Because I was going up against somebody that was a big coach in the industry, that had this legal team, that there was this contract. I was worried about, like, hurting people's feelings. I didn't want it to be like, I didn't want to appear bad. Like, I just didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings. But I knew that I had to make that decision, and it was fucking terrifying. It was so scary, because I knew it wasn't going to be easy. I knew it was not going to be as cut and dry as I'm deciding to leave, and, you know, like, that was going to be accepted, which it wasn't. So from that last year, you know, that decision in itself, coming out of that coaching container, was fucking terrifying. And then after it, the impact of the fear was absolutely consuming. So let me tell you in this episode, like, I know people will say, you know, fear never goes, which it doesn't. But one of the things I learned last year was that I understand what it's like to be paralyzed by fear. I get it because I was there for months. And it was in January of this year when I had a experience with psychedelics that everything began to shift for me. But I had, like, literally, I'm not even joking, like, I had to get to rock bottom in order for me to open myself up, have that experience spiritually, and for things to begin to move. But when I was paralyzed by fear, the tips that I'm sharing are the things that I was doing every single fucking day. Every day I was committed. And it was the hardest period of my life. And you know why else it was hard? Because business, it was so successful. Even when I was a PT, it was really successful. It was fucking hell. I had the biggest launch that I've ever had in the Divine. I made that investment and the rug got pulled from underneath me. So I know what it's like to be paralyzed by fear. But there's also a difference between people who stay in that and people who move through that. And that is what I pride myself on. I am a self-led woman. I will drag myself through the shit in order to get through the other side. And I say that openly. That's why transparency is so important to me. Like, you know, from that experience, I learned a lot. I learned what I don't want in business. I learned a lot actually about the coaching industry. And now that I'm becoming a business coach, that's a part of my why, that's a part of my mission, because I lost a fuck ton of money and I know what that feels like, and I know what that feels like to have trust broken, and I know what that feels like when fear is projected onto you and it feels like it's impossible. I know what that's like, and I got myself through that, and I don't want another woman to ever fucking be in that situation again. So from that experience, that's what I take forward as a business coach. And I did once get told that in order for me to teach things, I have to go through it. Kind of wish that wasn't the case, but hey ho, here we are. I guess that's why I can teach things with such authenticity, because I get it. I know what it's like. So something I want to start this episode off with, I want you to understand that fear will always be there. So coming out of that, you know, that really heavy experience last year, fear has always popped up ever since I was self-employed in 2018. Ever since I made that decision to quit my job and go self-employed as a personal trainer, fear has always been there, and it always will be there. And the reason being is because when we are committed to growth and when we are moving into, like I said at the beginning of this episode, when we are moving into new versions of ourselves, the fear of the unknown is always going to be there, because we don't know what's on the other side. We don't know what's to come. So understanding that you can never fully get rid of fear, and understanding that because it never goes, it's your job to be able to move through it, because no matter what level you get to, it will always pop up and it will always plant a question in your head. So tip number 1 is know that fear is an emotion, meaning you can move through it. You do not become it. Huge. Okay. So fear, like any other emotion that we have, whether that's happiness, whether that's sadness, whether that's frustration, whether that's anger, any emotion that we have, fear is exactly the same as that. And that means we can move through it. And often the mistake that people make, especially when it comes to business, and I think especially when it comes to taking risks or making investments or putting an offer out there that they wanna put out to their audience, one of the things that happens is they become the fear. So what that means is the fear takes over. It stops them moving through it. It stops them taking action. And what actually happens is, and I know because I done this last year, you actually begin to take action as if you are the fear, as if you are an embodiment of the fear, or you actually stop taking the action that you know that you need to do in order to make things feel better. You start thinking as if you're fear. You start holding yourself as if you're fear. Your energy, everything about you just vibrates on that frequency of I am afraid. And what you're doing when you become an emotion is you are literally blocking yourself off so much. And part of moving through fear is noticing that it's there, but just fucking running through that gate anyway. It's like, you know, the moment, have you ever went to like jump off a cliff or do something scary and you run up, and there'll be like a moment where your body just wants to like stop. If you stop in that moment, you're not jumping off that cliff. But if you notice that and you run anyway, before you know it, boom, you're off that cliff and you've jumped into that water. It's exactly the same analogy. So when you feel that fear, one of the things for me that was like, so like, I think there was a period last year when I was paralyzed by that fear, and I think it was probably around the time I pulled out of the coaching program. I was paralyzed by it, and I did become it. Meaning I didn't want to show up on social media. I didn't feel aligned with anything I was selling. Like I just woke up in the morning and I was so turned off. I'd wake up and I'd just be like, I can't do any of this. Because I became an embodiment of it. And then one of the things that began to help me was noticing that fear, noticing in my body where I felt the fear and knowing that it was an emotion. You are not that. So whatever it is that you have to do in order to understand that it is emotion and then move through it is what you need to be doing. Links me into tip number 2. Rinse and repeat the reprogramming every damn day. I'm not saying this lightly. When I say last year, I was on my hands and fucking knees every day. I'd wake up, I'd come to my journal, I'd do the meditation, I'd write my thoughts out, I'd reprogram my thoughts, I'd tap them in, I'd go to the mirror, I'd do my skincare routine, and I would literally say to myself in the mirror, we go again. And I committed every day, every day, every day. Was it monotonous? Yeah. Was it a drag? Yeah. Did it make me feel like shit sometimes? Absolutely. But I was so committed to rinsing and repeating the things that I knew worked. Because I knew that fear was an emotion. So what I would do is I'd meditate, I'd tap into where I felt it within my body, and I would breathe through that emotion. And even if it just felt a little bit lighter, I'd just continue to breathe through it. So knowing for you whatever it is that you do when you feel that fear, know that you can feel it, but then move through it and make that your commitment. Make it your biggest commitment to every single time that fear comes up. You are moving, because you know that is what you deserve. You deserve to move through it. You have to move through it. Otherwise you become it. And you commit to that, and you commit to that, and you commit to that. Because trust me, one day it'll work, and it did with me. One day it'll work. Tip number 3, ask yourself what's the worst that can happen if you take a risk. So in relation to business, you know, any single time I've made an investment, any single time I've wanted to go into launch, what's the worst that can happen? No one's going to sign up. Okay, then what? I lose money. Trust, expensive lesson, 10k for the fucking lesson, it's expensive. But you know what? That was the worst case scenario, and I got through it, and I'm on the other side of it. And what's the worst that can happen? You might lose money, but there's a quote that I love, and I actually posted it on my Instagram, and it says, fear is the, oh, what is it? Failure is tuition you pay for success, and it's by Walter Brunel. And every single morning I listen to Les Brown, and he talks about failure and fear of failure. And I think that's one of the biggest things that creates fear in people, this notion of, if I try and I fail. The reality is, who gives a fuck if you fail? Like, who cares? You tried. You will not have any regrets later down the road. You have to try. You cannot let fear hold you back. And feel fear of failure or judgment or people not signing up or whatever it is. It's just, it doesn't deserve to stop you. It doesn't deserve to stop you. So really sit with that. What's the worst that can happen? And for a long time for me, I was like, not investing in a coach again. Like, that was the worst thing that happened. And then through doing all of this work and like shifting the perspective, what I've realized is I actually am in a space now where I have invested again, and it feels really fucking good. But actually, instead of looking at what happened as like, oh yeah, it was a massive loss of money, it was, but also I learned so much. I learned what I didn't want to do. I learned how I didn't want to run my business. I learned that integrity is actually so much more important than me making millions ever would be. Having my integrity and caring about my clients and seeing them have success is so important. Helping my client, understanding that cookie cutter ways of doing things don't work. So ensuring that when I work with my business clients, what works for them and lights them up and works for their business is the priority. I'm not going to teach you to be me. I'm going to bring all of my knowledge, all of my expertise that I've gathered building 2 brands, 2 successful brands and 2 businesses. And I am going to give that to you, and we are going to mold that so it works for you, so you can show up and you can be that on fucking fire with what you're selling and the business that you have. That's what I got from last year. So that was the worst that happened, but when I speak about what I got from it, it doesn't really feel that bad. So just connect to that, like, what's the worst that's going to happen, honestly? If you put an offer out or launch a program, what's the fucking worst that's going to happen? No one signs up. I've been there. Trust me, it's not that bad. No one signs up. Okay, you go again. I was speaking to a client about it recently. She had a launch. No one signed up. And she said, like, what do we do? And I said, you learn from it. You go out. You do your market research.
Could you try again?
City. He always says that on my Apple Watch. You do your market research. You learn from it. And you go again. Like, it's part of growth, it's part of business, it's part of expansion, it's part of finding out what your audience wants and what works in your business. So tip number 4 is connect to your dream and use that to drag yourself to the other side or to propel yourself through that fear. So this was a big one for me as well. And I'd probably say like this was the biggest one for me last year, because when I was in that space of feeling paralyzed by fear, it hurt me more the thought of giving up than it did the thought of moving through the fear. That was scarier for me. And that still to this day is. It scares me, the thought of giving up and having like a mediocre life, than to go out there and fail and try and get back up and go again and launch again and invest again. That hurts me more than doing any of that stuff. That scares me more, the thought of fear winning, than the thought of all of those things. So connect to your dream and use that every single time you feel that fear come up. So for me with the divine, when I went into launch, if there was ever any fear around it not working, I just connect to the why of that program. Now when I'm going into business coaching, totally new. It's scary, of course it's scary. It took me a long time to feel like, to understand what the universe was pushing me towards and the point it was bringing me to. You know, along that way there was fear. I'm running a masterclass soon. I'm going to be nervous as hell when I run that masterclass, because it's the first time I've ever shown up as a business coach and done a masterclass. But it's fucking exciting. It's exciting. And that's how I know that I'm in this new phase and it's so right for me, because it feels scary. Self-love didn't feel scary anymore. Self-love didn't feel in alignment anymore. And that for me is always an indication that I'm possibly outgrowing things. There's good and bad types of fear. You know, there's the type of fear that'll come up and you're like, no, my intuition is telling me that's not what I should do. And then there's that fear that'll come up like around investing. When I made that investment again with Rosie, I was back and forth in the DMs so much. I was like, I'm so scared. Like, Rosie, like, send me the link, and then another 2 days would go by and I'd sit on it, and then I'd journal on it, and I'd be like, okay, I'm in. And then the fear would come up again. And like, I just got to the point when I was like, okay, what is my dream? Like, connecting to my dream, knowing that if I take the risk again, it is what it is. And I just got myself into a space where investing felt really fucking good. So it's just like, connect to your why all of the time and understand that your why, if it's something that you are so passionate about and you believe in it so much, it will always outweigh the fear. It will make the fear feel tiny. It will make that fear feel so insignificant to the point where you will be, if you have a mentor or a coach or somebody around you who you can talk to, utilize on those people also to remind you of why you do what you do and move through it, like shift it. And that, even like recently, I've been reaching out to my coach around things that are coming up, and it's being that self-led woman and knowing that talking about it also helps you move through it. You're like, okay, this is how I'm feeling. Like, what is it that I need to do? Do I need to reach out to my mentor? Do I need to, I don't know, go for a walk in nature? Do I need to allow myself to feel creative? Do I need to meditate? Do I need to do some breath work? Do I need to go for a run, go to the gym? Whatever it is that you need to do in order to be able to help you move through that is exactly what you need to be doing in that moment. And also the bigger thing is like coming back to the why every single time. Why are you launching that program? Why do you want to start that business? Why do you want to quit your job? Why do you want to end that relationship? Why do you want to go and travel? All of these things that are scary in life. But you can do it. Fear does not have to win. And I am somebody who can firsthand say that even when fear feels like it is paralyzing you, if you have enough determination and self-motivation and you want it enough, you will get out the other side of it. Trust me. Trust me. So I hope that's been a useful episode. It was short and sexy, but I feel like there were some good tips in there. So yeah, it is what it is. Also, one of the other things I want you to know is that the first time you do anything, it's going to feel scary. The first few times you do something, it's going to feel scary. First time you have a coaching client, it's going to feel scary. First time you launch an offer, it's going to be scary. But the more that we do things, the more trust and confidence we get. And the less we worry about what people think of us. So if you're feeling fearful of like judgment or like people, like one of the things I know women struggle with is showing up authentically online, because there's a lot of fear around judgment or what they think they should be doing. And the reality is, it's like being yourself is the biggest superpower, and I wish women would understand that, especially when it comes to business. When you are yourself and you're connected to yourself and you're connected to what you're offering and you're just showing up in that energy, that is the biggest thing that will bring people to you, that will gravitate people towards you. Every single testimonial I got in the Divine, one of the questions in the feedback form is, what made you want to sign up? 9 out of 10 people say Lydia's energy on Instagram. Like, I just knew that I wanted to work with it. No one's saying that email sequence that you sent me was amazing. All of these things also matter. But the biggest thing is being yourself is your superpower. So if you are worried about people judging you, or you are worried about what your friends are going to think of you or your family's going to think of you. Know that in a way you are holding yourself back when you're not allowing yourself to lean in. You're holding yourself back, which means you're holding your business back, which means you're holding your income back. And the more you are you, and the more you're able to just move through any fear that you've got around that judgment, or around, I don't know, what you're offering to people or anything, just the easier it becomes. And that honestly is something that has helped me build 2 brands, is being myself. Like, I've built 2 successful brands as myself. So yeah, just don't stand in your own way, because you're the only person that's going to give you what it is that you desire. Nobody else is going to allow you to have that apart from you. So it doesn't matter what people think you. Like, it really doesn't matter. It doesn't, like, last year when I had 1 boob, like, I didn't care what people thought of me, because I was just like, it would do me more damage and my business more damage for me to try and hide that and pretend that I wasn't going through something and pretend that I could show up for my clients 100% when actually I might have, some days I might have only been like 70% because my health wasn't there. Like, thinking about how I had to show up created more fear. And when I realised that actually I don't give a shit what people think of me, I'm just going to own what it is that's going on for me, and I just spoke about it, again, people just were attracted to me more, because I was just being real, I was being honest, I was being raw, I was talking about the things that were helping me through it, I was talking about how self-love was helping me. So I think you just got to be you. And you just got to know that fear will always be there, but don't block yourself for too long, because before you know it, as Les Brown always says, you'll wake up one day and you're 5 years behind on your dreams, and then before you know it, it's too late. So always keep that in mind. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode, my loves, and I shall see you next week for another episode. I'm looking forward to it. I see you. I love you. Thank you for being here.